than we ever dreamed, and I feel really fortunate to have survived my ordeal, to know what our brains can do and to be able to exercise mine and use mine for freely in the ways that everyone should know we can do, such as the 44 times visual acuity. I recently used that when I was diagnosed with cataracts and I was going to have cataract surgery and all, and I thought, if I can have 44 times visual acuity, why can't I fix this part of my eyes? When I went in for the pre-examination set up for the surgery, my eyes were 100% cured, and they have stayed that way. Those are little things that we can do because of what we're capable of, that instead we're being just manipulated by, and that kind of information is being kept from us, because 44 times visual acuity is a very important factor for the government to be able to pluck children like myself and put them into military intelligence or military special forces, because they can shoot and not miss a target. Their vision is so precise. Additionally, when a child is abused and they begin developing these compartments in the brain, as more and more compartments develop on the subconscious level and the conscious mind is being pushed out of the way, where there's no capacity for question, reason, conscious awareness, and conscious thought. Because when you're operating in these different compartments, for example, the one that developed because of my father's sexual abuse. When my father would come in and to sexually abuse me, the same part of my brain that was familiar with that would open up so that he would do it again and again as needed, and yet it would still remain compartmentalized in this section. Our brains are phenomenal. So that the rest of my mind could function normally. Well, that part of my brain would open up for my father's sexual abuse. Then my father began prostituting me. My mother's father had a Blue Masonic Lodge. He ran a Blue Masonic Lodge up in Michigan, and it was where the politicians were just real, local politicians were just real active. And my father began prostituting me out to different ones who were aware of the child abuse, because of the knowledge coming through on CIA mind control and being so much a part of a criminal faction of our government that's also referred to as the shadow government, that was slowly gaining control and finally gained control with the Kennedy assassination. They'd already got a pretty good control, but they really took a major control over the population, because, like I was telling you, when trauma occurs, then the brain has a way of kicking in to deal with trauma. And most people who are old enough to know exactly where they were and what they were doing at the time that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. It traumatized the nation. It traumatized the nation to see it on TV over and over and over again. That trauma left people suggestible, left that subconscious open to where they were highly suggestible and easily led. And that was the beginning. Consider what I'm saying with the effects of what happened 9/11 or 9/11 as it's referred. I refer to it as 911 because that's the emergency number, and they like to do those kind of number games anyway. It was also flight 11 at 9. So they were playing that with the numbers, but nevertheless, on 9/11, the whole nation was traumatized. And in that trauma, people became suggestible. And how many people ran out and bought a flag, because that was what we were told to do. And the compliance of the people at that time was so strong, and it gave the shadow government a firm control over all of us that is just finally now shaking. It's finally starting to stop, because people are waking up, and they're waking up en masse, and it's happening all over this country. Mark and I travel outside this country, and we're thrilled to see how much more wide awake and aware the rest of the world is at this point, where they have a compassion for people in the United States, knowing that we are not our government. We are not that shadow government that's taken over, that the people here are rising up, they're gaining voice, and they're standing strong by issues of 9/11 and taking action in their own communities. Mark and I have been speaking out on mind control for over 20 years now. That's a long time to be speaking out on the subject. We've seen a vast difference between when we first started speaking and now. People are waking up, and it's awareness that is that we've got to have. We've got to keep this awareness going, because knowledge is our only defense against mind control. The compartmentalization of memory that I was talking about, where when my father began prostituting me to these political people as well, developed more compartments in my brain. It was like, oh, whoa, where do I turn? You know, I can't even turn to our local law enforcement. I can't turn to politicians. And, you know, I really felt that there was nowhere to go, and my brain automatically began compartmentalizing. Further, when my father began doing child pornography of me and sold it through the local Michigan Mafia child pornography ring, that criminal faction of the government, that shadow government that was monitoring such things as those child pornography rings, we didn't have internet back then, the child pornography rings, to target children like myself for MK Ultra mind control. And of course, I'd mentioned that Blue Masonic Lodge, and one of the members there was a local politician named Gerald Ford. Of course, this is the same Gerald Ford that went into the office of president, and was very much a part of how I ended up being used on a White House Pentagon level during the Reagan-Bush administration. But he was interested this criminal faction was interested in children like myself, because when you have so many of those compartments, there's no continuity of thought anymore. If you operate in this compartment and have no memory of it, operate in this compartment and have no memory of it, there's no way to have any continuity of thought bridging, and there's no ability to have any continuity of time. You don't have a concept of time at all. I didn't know. I began to lose my whole perspective on time, how long anything was. This is something that they were also interested in. They know it's a phenomena of the brain, because when a person doesn't know how long they've been doing something, the physical endurance is tremendous. You don't get tired if you don't know you're supposed to be tired. So it creates a physical endurance that's really good for military special forces, military intelligence, or the kind of political prostitution that I was eventually used in the course of the kind of missions that I was forced to carry out in later years. So this local politician, who was just one more pedophile to me, came to the house and told my father that he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would agree to sell me into the CIA's mind control project. My father agreed to it, was actually pretty thrilled about it, thinking, wow, you know, the government condones child abuse, this is wonderful. He excitedly agreed to it, had 5 more children afterwards just to raise in the project. So there were 7 of us children in the family and all. But as soon as my father agreed, he was flown to Boston, Massachusetts for a course on how to manipulate the subconscious